The Shepnaz podcast begins now.
You're listening to the Shepnaz podcast, a podcast at Shepherd Church. Everything we do here is to help people take their next step toward Jesus, and this podcast is part of that. We want to help you engage daily in your faith. Over the next week, we're going to take a different pace through the podcast. There's no sermon this coming Sunday for our Thanksgiving Sunday, but what we're going to do instead is take a look at some of the things that God has done, and we're going to talk about thankfulness in maybe a new way. And today is how we're going to get started with that. When Israel was at their best, their peak efficiency, or maybe in their bountiful blessing state, they remembered the thing that God had done for them. When they were doing their best, when they were fulfilling their end of the covenant, they were remembering the good things that God has done. We see this throughout the Old Testament. You could see it in the book of Joshua. You could see it in 1 Samuel. You see it in Nehemiah chapter 8, when Ezra reads the law and reads the things that God has done and recounts the amazing things God has done. Israel was at its best when they were living a life of gratitude and loving the things that God had done for them and expecting him to continue doing it. And as we enter into Thanksgiving this coming week, I think it's important for us as people to do the same thing. One of the great stories in the book of Joshua is like this. It says this in Joshua 4, starting in verse 21, or let's start in verse 20. It says, "Then Joshua set up in Gilgal the 12 stones that he had taken from the Jordan, and he said to the Israelites, 'In the future, when your children ask their fathers, what is the meaning of these stones? You should tell your children that Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the water of the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. And just as the Lord your God did to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we had crossed over. This is so that all the people of the earth may know that the Lord's hand is mighty, so that you may always fear the Lord your God.'" Israel had a knack for falling away, but like I said, when they were following God, when they were doing the things he had called them to do, they did it from a heart of gratitude. And in this story, Joshua helps the people to remember what God had done for them, and he sets literal stones up. 12 stones representing each of the 12 tribes of Israel, sets these stones up and says, "Listen, someday your kids are going to ask why these are here. They're going to see this monument and say, 'Dad, what is that all about?' And then you have the opportunity then to say, well, this is to remind us that when we went to cross the Jordan River, God dried it up so that we could. And he did it just like he did the Red Sea when Moses led our ancestors away from Egypt and into the promised land. All of these things that God has done, we remember. So this Thanksgiving, what if you were to take some time as a family? I would even challenge you to literally go grab some stones. So here's an activity for you as your family to increase your thankfulness and to kind of kickstart what it looks like to live a life of gratitude. I want you to gather some stones, some light-colored stones in a clear vase or bowl. And I would love for you to challenge your family at Thanksgiving that they would write on a stone something God had done that year. Something that God has done that you can trace back to him and you can be thankful for. And then I want you to talk about it and remember it and think about it, and then put those stones on display in your home so that every time you walk past that shelf and you see this vase or this bowl full of stones of the things that God has done, that you'd remember his goodness, remember that he's always there. Remember that he keeps his promises. And if you continue to do this, think about just the cloud of witnesses of all these things God has done that will help to propel you forward in gratitude in your life, and will help your family to live in gratitude. You're teaching your kids, you're teaching your relatives that gratitude, that thankfulness for what God has done helps to propel us into obedience, because he's done these things. We can bank on him to continue to do these things. And because he does these things for us, we can then live in obedience, because we're going to follow him, because he always comes through.
Join the Sing Church community of believers for a special worship night with Ron Canoli at Shepherd Church of the Nazarene in Gehenna, Ohio.
I'm Dr. Ron Canoli. Along with me will be my good friend, Pastor Joe Vasconcelos. And we want you to be there, because there's going to be awesome singing, there's going to be great praise and worship, and there's going to be anointed teaching. So you don't want to miss it. We will see you there.
Ron Canoli is a world-renowned worship leader, singer, and songwriter who has inspired millions of people with his uplifting songs and messages. This worship night will take place on November 19th at 6 p.m. This is a free, non-ticketed event. We look forward to seeing you there. For more information, go to shepnaz.org/calendar.
This Thanksgiving, we want to welcome you into a life of gratitude, of thankfulness. We hope that you'll be able to join us on Sunday for a great day of Thanksgiving here at Shepherd Church. Whether you're online, you come to Johnstown, you come to Gehenna, we're going to celebrate the great things that God has done over the past year. You're going to have an opportunity to give your own testimony of gratitude. We hope that you'll be there. That's going to wrap it up for episode today. So thankful for you for listening. If you have any questions or you have any comments about the podcast, you can get a hold of us at podcast@shepnaz.org. Of course, you can always find out about all that's happening at Shepherd through our website, our app, and our social media pages. We're so thankful for you for listening. That's one of our thankful things, that we are thankful for you for being a part of this. We hope that you'll share this with a friend and that you live into a life of gratitude this year. Have a great day.
This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gehenna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.